Greetings and salutations. Today is March 12th. It's been 4 days since Women's Day, and I know I'm a bit late, but let me just say it now. Happy Women's Day to all the wonderful women out there, and just to be inclusive, because, you know, it's 2024, Happy Women's Day to all the not so wonderful women out there. But that's not why I'm here today. Today is the Detransition Awareness Month, and usually I don't read things on camera here. Usually I just talk, but today I'm going to do something different. I'm going to read you something I wrote, a letter of sorts. Oh, I cough so hard I get pain in my chest. Dear trans people, my name is Alexander Linkowski, and I'm a detransitioner. For a very long time, a detransitioner was a dirty word, something you don't want to see, something you'd hide under the carpet or in your closet. As long as it's not in the open, as long as it's not staring right at you. Despite all of that, here I am, and there's more of us, speaking and being heard. When you hear the word detransitioner, that may evoke all sorts of different reactions and emotions. Some of those reactions can be based on the pre-existing prejudice. It was less than a year ago when I first opened up about my past, my transition, and my detransition. I remember so vividly how some people jumped into conclusions about me. Oh, he's transphobic. He wants to make life in transition more difficult for trans people. Him talking would only lead to more transphobia. And while I can't be responsible how others will react to my testimony, I can try to do my best to speak clearly about my intentions so my message is understood. All those accusations were based on the fact that I have detransitioned. I think that we, yes, all of us, should be doing better than this. I never assume what a person is like based on their sex, gender identity, sexuality, or race, or because of their past experiences and mistakes. I don't believe in reducing a person to a set of identitarian categories. I see complex people, beautiful people, and I strongly believe that putting each other in boxes and fighting is not the solution. And let me be clear, fighting is not something I want to do. It is not my intention. I believe in dialogue. Ever since my story gained some attention, I have talked to multiple trans people. Some of them were trans activists. And in most cases, we managed to come to a mutual understanding, or at least agreed to disagree in a friendly manner. Some of the people who have showed me most understanding and compassion when I first opened up about being detrans were trans people. And that is something I appreciate and am grateful for. First, let me say that I share a lot of empathy and understanding for you and your struggle with gender dysphoria, because I experienced it myself. And sometimes it can be hard to imagine that I stand here today being dysphoria-free and feeling happy in my body, loving being a man. Second, I have zero intention of misgendering you in any way, shape, or form, or disrespect you as a trans person or as a human being. I oppose transphobia and any unreasonable attacks on you. I am familiar with your path and your struggle because at the end of the day, we are not that different. I think that trans and detrans people have more in common than there is separating us. Perhaps you are experiencing a dysphoria towards your body. Now, imagine that someone like me and many others out there are experiencing a similar dysphoria towards their bodies, but not because of how we were born, but because of the choices we made. Whether we blame ourselves or the doctors and therapists, the dysphoria caused by undergoing genital surgeries that leave us mutilated for the rest of our lives. Your body reminds you just how much you messed up every time you go to the toilet, every time you shower, and it can make intimate relationships difficult and challenging. Or the women who had their breasts removed and miss them every single day. The women who can't breastfeed their own kids. The women whose heart breaks when they look at the babies and think of what they've lost.
And now that I can't breastfeed, I just realized just how important that really is. Because even breastfeeding is very important to the bond between a mother and her child.
I understand your struggle and support you. All I ask in return is that you take a moment of your time to hear our stories and our experiences with no judgment, just as I approach you with no judgment. My intention is not to ban transitioning. I have met people who have lived happily post-transition and who have benefited from it. Their mental health and general satisfaction with life improved. I am not denying that. Some of these people I consider my friends. However, I also want you to know that some people get hurt in the process. A lot of those people are homosexual and bisexual people, myself included. Imagine for a moment what it is like growing up different. Perhaps it's not that hard for you, since our cases likely contain some shared elements. You're either a feminine boy or a masculine girl, perhaps liking the individuals of the same sex. You feel misunderstood, perhaps bullied by your peers. That happened to me. I was called all sorts of derogatory words one may use towards a gay guy, even though I never explicitly stated that I am gay. I never liked stereotypically masculine things and got ashamed for it. The idea of being the opposite sex felt like freedom at a time. It was a gateway to the world where I wouldn't be shamed and judged for not being the sort of man society expected. I grew up in a conservative, religious, and homophobic environment. To this day, I can feel the trauma it inflicted on me. Strict gender roles and norms and homophobic attitudes hurt people. I believe that we can both agree on that. You may have heard some people talk how transitioning is a new form of conversion therapy, or heard the terms like transing the gay away. Perhaps you might be thinking, that's just transphobia. That's just propaganda. But I know for a fact that transitioning is also being sold to us non-straight people as an escape. I have experienced this myself and met plenty of other gays and lesbians who are or were in a similar situation. Some come to the realization that they're actually gay, not trans, before they took any drastic measures. Others, like me, didn't escape in time and suffered long-term consequences.
This is nuts! This is absolutely fucking nuts. Like, when you sit and talk about it, you're like, not only is it crazy to do, it's crazy that we both went and did it. Like, how insane are we?
I have met parents who'd rather have a trans child than a gay child. At least a trans child appears straight when he or she is passing. What happens to us is that from one side we are being bullied for who we are, while from the other side we are being sold a solution to escape. But escape doesn't solve the issue. At time, it felt like I was sold a dream. But the thing about dreams is that, well, at one point, you have to wake up. There are gay and bisexual people out there who petition for the removal of T from lgbt.
The LGB and the T refer to two different communities with different needs.
I believe that we can coexist. I believe that we can stand together. But for that to happen, you must acknowledge what has been happening to us, what is happening to us. It is through mutual understanding and compassion and through dialogue that we can work things out. The media loves conflict. They would love to see trans and detrans people fight. But I don't think the media has people's best interest in mind. For that reason, let's screw those guys by not giving them what they want. Instead of fighting, we could sit down and talk. It is through conversations that we can come up with a solution that doesn't step on your rights as a trans person, and that doesn't prohibit your right to transition and express yourself however you want. But ones that also take people like me and other detransitioners and desisters into consideration. Perhaps my message has helped you understand why I am not a supporter of the system in which one can get access to medical transition just by stating they're trans. Why I think that therapy is important to find out whether there is another issue at hand. Perhaps some of us just need to accept ourselves, which can be hard to achieve in a world that hates you for who you are and leaves so little space for self-expression. I too used to have gender dysphoria, but I was never trans. I think it's important that we officially acknowledge that gender dysphoria is not exclusive to trans people, and that in those cases, medical transition is not always the best option. We already know and accept that several physical illnesses can have similar or same symptoms. Let's take headache, for example. A headache can have multiple causes. We shouldn't be jumping into a conclusion that everyone with a headache has a migraine, or that everyone with a headache has a brain tumor. I mean, that's ridiculous, right? And for that reason, I asked to take seriously the fact that some of us who are not trans can also experience a form of gender dysphoria. It can be simple examples. For instance, a man who feels dysphoria towards his body hair, but who doesn't necessarily wish to transition and who still identifies as a man. Or it can manifest in more complex ways, as was in my case. I didn't want to be the stereotype of a man, and because the only type of masculinity I was exposed to growing up was the type that puts on a bravado and puts others down. The intolerant type, which lacks and hates sensitivity. I ended up despising masculinity and being a man. After being chewed and spit out, I didn't want to see myself evolving into something I despised. A man. I never wanted to be a woman. I just didn't want to be a man. That is, until I realized that being a man is not about being a macho man who lacks sensitivity. The moment I realized that is the moment I started learning how to love myself. With that, I ask you to consider the casualties. For a long time, we've been told that very few people detransition. Some would even say it's less than 1%. I think it's more than that. But in reality, we can't really know the actual number. But should it matter whether it's 1% or 20%? I think that excusing casualties, no matter how many or how few, is ethically questionable, and that the casualties of transitioning will be a study of bioethics in the near future. Perhaps you were able to relate to my experience and thought to yourself, that sounds like me. And maybe you're unsure whether you're actually trans or not. It's a good idea to take your time and think things through. Perhaps you didn't share the same experiences as me, and your path looks very different, and you made a decision to transition that you are fulfilled with. Whichever the case, I wish you all the best. Life is not an easy journey, no matter where you stand or who you are. If there's anything we can do and should do, it is to show more compassion and understanding to those who walk different paths, who think differently, and even those who hardly think at all. It is through conversations that we tear down the walls. It is through conversations that we find common ground. It is through conversations that we kill our prejudice towards each other and learn to understand each other better. I write this in hope that we can resolve this issue together. Sincerely, Alexander.